Welcome back to my channel and to Step by Step. We come here every week to paint some furniture. We either paint the whole thing or we do just steps at a time. So today you're getting the whole enchilada and we're painting an upholstered chair. The chair is for a client and it's kind of an ivory color and it has cherry wood arms and legs. And we're gonna paint the arms and legs gold. Here's the original chair, and we're going to do a buttercream.
Hi, today we're going to be painting fabric. So we have this chair here, and we're going to be using Dixie Belle's buttercream. It's already kind of a light color, but we're going to use that, and then we're going to be adding a stripe, but that'll be on the next step. But the most important part of this project is the mister bottle. It's really important to wet the fabric whenever you paint fabric because it gets in the fibers and it helps the paint to get in those fibers. We're also going to be using Dixie Belle's new Scarlet brush. So it just fits in the palm of your hand. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'm just going to mist this fabric. So you can see there's a pattern in the fabric. It's like a jacquard. You'll still see that. So we're just going to start painting the fabric just like you would paint anything else, just like a piece of furniture. You just kind of work the paint into the fabric. And I love this brush, but really important just to keep misting. Now it depends on the coverage that we get here, whether we need 1 or 2 coats. And every time I talk about painting fabric, I get a bunch of questions. So a couple of the questions are, will I be able to sit on it? Yes, it's just like as if you painted furniture, it'll dry. So far that coverage looks really good. We're just going to keep going here. And then the other question that people ask, will it be hard? And it does it depends on what kind of fabric you're painting. The texture of the fabric to start with. If you're painting something soft, chances are it'll remain kind of soft. But one of the techniques that we use is to actually use sandpaper in between the coats. I'm not worrying about getting any of it on the arms because I'm going to be painting them as well. But yes, we actually sand it in between coats and that softens up that fabric. This chair is in really good shape. So it's a shame to pay so much money to have something reupholstered when you can paint it. And this time, it's not just me saying I'll paint anything. There's lots of people that paint fabric. It definitely uses a good bit of paint, but that's another reason why we use the water, so that it helps the fabric to absorb it. See how you can still see a little bit of the pattern? And that's kind of a cool feature. Sometimes when you paint florals, you actually might want to paint over the flowers first before, like with a primer before you start. You could use Boss, which is a stain blocking primer from Dixie Belle, but it might help cover up those say you have big red flowers on a piece of furniture and you want to paint it a color like this. That might help you use less paint. And just do the flowered areas. But I'm glad this piece of furniture doesn't have any flowers. So far, so good. It looks really good. And usually I let it dry overnight between coats. You'll know, if it's dry or not just by the feel. Of course, the more water you use, the longer it's going to take to dry. So that's why I kind of recommend working small areas at a time so that you don't have to saturate it, but you just get a good mist on the area that you're working on. All right, so far so good. I'm liking it. I'm going to keep painting here and we'll come back and update you on the results.
Now that we've given the fabric a first coat, we're going to put a coat of Boss primer on the arms so that it doesn't bleed through, and also gives it a nice coat so we can paint the Moonshine Metallics in Gold Digger and let its brilliance show through. Here I am, while that paint's drying, taping off the lines because I want to put a line, a stripe down the middle and 2 small stripes on either side. So I measure the middle, put a piece of tape, and then I put tape on either side so that I get the right distance from either side. It takes me a while to do it, but we get it eventually. And when you start the other side stripes, you kind of want to eyeball it a little bit and then measure. So you don't have bleed through, it's wise to use the original color first before you use the other color, because if it's going to seep under, it's better to have it be that color. And now we're going to use Dusty Blue for the stripe. The other one is dry. And yes, you do get little bits and pieces on the other parts, and you have to touch it up a little bit later. It's really hard not to when you're working with this kind of detail. I found it's kind of best to paint away from the tape, and then you're least likely to get any sort of bleed through. Okay, we're ready to put the Moonshine Metallics Gold Digger on the legs and the arms of this piece. Obviously this is an old container, so there's not much in it. So I just want to show you what it looks like inside, and just to show you the importance of actually stirring this paint. Because anything that has metallic elements in it, they will settle. It's metal, so it'll settle to the bottom. So it's super important to really stir it so that you get the best quality. So I'm just going to use a little small brush so I can get the details. This is not a Dixie Belle brush. I was just looking for a small one that was clean, and that's what I got. So I have 2 coats of Boss on here in white because I wanted a nice background for the paint. I wanted it to be a consistent, solid background and not the dark wood. Moonshine Metallics is awesome because it has a great consistency, whoops, and it sort of has a built-in sealer. Kind of seals itself, in my estimation. It leaves a great finish. So I'm probably going to end up doing 2 coats on this as well. I may also use some of this on the fabric because I think I'm going to put a laurel leaf over the stripe. So we were talking about the stripe and we're going to revisit that here soon. I'm going to get this lower portion as well. This color really gets better and better as you layer it. I'm glad I decided to open up this container. I knew there wasn't much in it, but there's still a good bit. And I'm getting a lot of coverage from it. So I'm going to keep painting this first coat, and we'll come back when it's time for the second coat and to do the rest of the painting on the fabric. I'm going to put a narrow stripe beside the broad stripe in the middle on either side. So I've put some tape down either side for a spacer. And here I think that my stripe went off a little, so I'm going to fill that in a little bit. But now I'm just going to kind of eyeball what I think I want my stripe to be. And then every so often I'm going to come along and make sure that I'm accurate. So it's about a quarter of an inch. So I'm just going to kind of actually come up here. Alright, I'm coming back in for my second coat of Moonshine Metallics and Gold Digger, and this time I have a Dixie Belle brush, and I think we're going to see a big difference because this is a synthetic brush. Oh yeah. And also the fact that it's a second coat. See my brush there? It just holds that paint so much better. Such nice coverage we're getting now. So I'm going to keep painting. This is probably going to be the last coat because I think this one's going to do it. So now we're applying a Dixie Belle stencil in the laurel wreath to the chair and on the chair back, and just using some tape to put it down. I've centered it over the stripe. And I want to make sure that it's down really far, and I'll be holding it down while I'm stenciling. And I'm going to use gemstone mousse in golden gem. You can see that this color is kind of waxy. There's 4 different colors and they have different consistencies depending on the color. It's just the nature of the beast, I guess. Some of them are kind of like a thick paint. This one to me is more like a wax. So I'm holding it down and using the stencil brush and just filling in the stencil. With this paint, you don't have to offload any of the paint. With regular paints, you would definitely want to be using very little paint, although with fabric, you do need a little bit more. So this was a first try using the gemstone mousse on fabric, and I think you'll see it ended up being a success. The color ended up looking really great with the Moonshine Metallic on the arms and legs in the Gold Digger. It's not quite as brilliant, so we're going to show you how we're going to add a little vintage character to the arms and legs with some wax. So we just continue to work this, holding down the stencil, and it's almost time for the reveal. This step didn't take too long. You ready? Wait for it, wait for it. Ta-da! Beautiful laurel wreath. I love the way that turned out. And now comes the Best Dang Wax in brown to the detail areas only, just to tone down a little bit of that brilliant, and isn't it gorgeous, in the Moonshine Metallics Gold Digger. That wax will just stay in those areas. It wants to wipe off easily, but it will stay in the detail areas. It'll set. To me, it adds just the right amount of vintage character. Just find a few more places where there's details. It's a great place for it there. And just lightly wipe off. Also being very careful because of the buttercream on the chair. Don't want to get brown wax on that. And the last step we're taking is applying the spray wax, easy peasy spray wax, over the chair, and we're just wiping it off. Now we did sand in between coats to make the fabric soft. You can sand right over the paint. So here it is. There's the finished piece. And I think it really turned out pretty, and I'm anxious to show my client. I'm going to surprise her with this video because I took the liberty of applying the laurel wreath, but she assured me I was the designer and that I should take my liberties. So we'll find out how she likes it. And if she doesn't, it's only paint, right? Well, I want to thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it, and as I mentioned before, I would love it if you subscribe, and that way you can come back and see what we're doing next week, or every day at 7 o'clock, or a Tuesday talk. Meanwhile, visit us on LaVintageDecor.company, and on Instagram, we're LaVintage Decor, and on Facebook, we're LaVintage Decor Altoona. Stay well.